then, big boy. Ours is the 15th. It's the third Tuesday. Hey, big guy. I like the sign there. One upside down. Good to see you.
About my brochure. Since I'm all done, I think I did enough.
Okay.
Just for you, buddy. The milk. Oh, man. No, not a sad dog story. Kind of protected dog. Tell you what, that means good.
How are you? It's good to see you. Good to see you. It's good to see you in the seat. You got pretty good.
Somerville.
How's my mayor doing? How you doing? Huh? How's my mayor doing? You know, doing all right? Good. As busy as I can. Vic, you doing all right? Good to see you. Hey, good to see you. Thank you so much. I think we do good.
Where's Tony?
Yeah, you see you too. Just get them all. No, you keep the seat. I can quit too if it beat me up. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
You've been great.
Thanks.
Mine get out and she got a clothes on, so she get out and shower. What was all about?
It's great.
How you doing? I need to be your bodyguard.
You might. You can hold me up anyway.
I'll say here, but I don't know if this is one lady here. I am.
You got the beer in
Let's get this meeting over with tonight. I'm just gonna do a silent.
Okay.
Better be.
Good evening. We'll call the Burlington City Council June 17, 2014 meeting to order. We'd like to take, at this opportunity, let me back up, sorry. We'd like to welcome you here this afternoon or this evening. We'd also like to remind you for any electronic devices, if you would silence them at this point in time. This time we'd ask for Council Member Shirley Fawcett for tonight's invocation.
Let us bow our heads in a moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Amen. First item on the agenda is the presentation to council. At this time, we'd recognize Ms. Vicki Hunt, representing Paul's. Welcome, Ms. Hunt.
Thank you so much. And this is sort of our annual visit to see you, although we may come back again soon. But we always like to start out by thanking you for everything you've done for Paws and for homeless dogs and cats in Burlington and all of Alamance County. So first things first, I have a check for the City of Burlington for $20,000 to cover improvements at the adoption center and the shelter. This year we did a commercial laundry system, so the dogs will have clean bedding and the surgical suite has clean laundry, and they're not just washed in a residential washing and drying machine. We also bought new beds, and I'm looking at Jess because she spent the money. New beds for all the runs, some epoxy floor treatments, some stainless steel enclosures that were badly needed at the old intake building, which I'll mention again. So I'd like to give this to you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I have given you a brochure, Benny's Sad Story with a Happy Ending, to lead into something you have already discussed and talked to the great new shelter director you hired, Jess. And I met her for the first time today. We've talked on the phone. I think she is an excellent choice for our shelter and is taking us in directions we need to be going into, and I know all of you support. But Benny's story, and this is the before and this is the after, and I want to point out to you, this is the same dog that was languished on a chain Now, he had some kind of a covering that they called a house, but this is what this dog turned into, and totally unrecognizable. And this was in cooperation with, because it happened to be in the county, this situation, the Sheriff's Department and his animal control people, the Adoption Center, Westbrook, the Humane Society, and then they helped us with Benny's new loving home. And I think you can see, I apologize for not everybody having a brochure, but the size of the collar the dog had on was so huge, and it was a little tiny dog underneath. Suffice to say, Benny's story has a happy ending, but there are a lot of dogs out there that are languishing on chains, and I think you have already charged Jess with coming back to you with a report. Many communities around us, Guilford, Orange, have an anti-tethering piece of legislation or ordinance, and I urge you, and I will continue to urge you to pass something. And I think we can start in Burlington, and then there are other towns in our county who have expressed an interest. But I want to say that life on the end of a chain is no life, and it's not just good enough. And dogs can't protect themselves. They're more apt to bite people. You have unwanted pregnancies, unwanted litters, which costs the municipalities money. And I'm glad you're getting started on that. I want to mention the intake building, and I think Jess has already mentioned it to you. It is a building that has far exceeded its useful life, and it's not fit for human or animal life at this point. I think the only thing you could really do is gut it and use it for storage, but I will put out to you and I will come back to you, because I think we have to start talking about either a new intake building or an enlargement of the adoption center to include the intake. Jess pointed out to me today that that might be the proper way to go because of the economies of staff and that sort of thing. But it's an old building, it's ramshackle. I wouldn't want you in it, and I don't want anybody in it. But thank you very much for all you do and all I know you will continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt.
Any questions for me?
Do you have any other members of your board?
And we will help with the money.
Thank you.
You know, we believe in that public-private partnership. So if you will let us start working on that and give us some sort of a commitment about how we go forward, we're ready.
And you looked in the right direction at Mr. Owen.
Yes, I always look to Mr. Owen.
Thank you very much. We appreciate what you do for the city of Burlington. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the report from the Burlington Community Work Group. This time we'd recognize Mr. Holt Skinner. Welcome, Mr. Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members and city staff. I'm glad to be here in front of you all tonight, representing the voice of the people, the Burlington Community Work Group. I'm pleased to report and happy to say that this past year has been a great experience, in our opinion, working with the city and with the city staff. And we feel like some good steps have been made on behalf of both the work group and the city to move forward and to show people that this is not a city of privilege and a council of privilege, but one that wants to work and wants to work on issues brought up by the people. It came out in the meeting last year that the community, or at least some of the community, feel like there are two sets of standards and codes and ordinances, if you will, in Burlington. The new Burlington versus the old Burlington, or historic Burlington. And I'm pleased to report that at least in the case of the area of commercial signs, this is no longer true. The use of commercial signs, the little yard signs sticking in the ground in the right-of-ways, had gotten out of hand all over Burlington from one end to the other. And the work group, together with the city staff, reviewed the ordinance and saw that it was a violation. And the city got right out, and I believe to date, 3,500 signs have been picked up, if I'm correct in that?
It's 3669.
36. Well, that just shows how out of hand it had gotten. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm sure that you all have noticed all over Burlington how much better it looks. It doesn't look like a yard sale anymore. Isn't that great? Especially the Church Street corridor on both ends. Also, as a beautification effort, our city limits, the work group went to Rhett Davis and the New Leaf Society and said, how about doing some things in the older part of Burlington? He said, we've been wanting to do that. So we suggested the Welcome to Burlington sign there across from Maxwell Volvo. And Mayor Wall and the council helped out tremendously by identifying the ownership of that property, and I believe New Leaf is currently working on that project. And we also gave information to the city staff in regard to the State Secretary of Cultural Resources, Susan Klutz, who's chair of a project with Cultural Resources in the state DOT, mandated by the governor to help with beautification using art, lighting, color, and texture on bridges, highways, and around city limits to make things more appealing. And Governor McCrory, as well as the Cultural Resources Director and the DOT, all agree that art is a proven way to help with beautification, economic development, and yes, even job recruitment and tourism. Our public transportation is another issue that we've been working on in the work group, which is coming up tonight, and I just wanted to say that we are pleased that the city is taking such a serious look at this. No matter what the outcome, we're thankful that you all are taking this seriously and recognizing the need in our community, so we applaud you on that. We also applaud the city for taking a closer look at junk on front porches, which had also gotten out of hand in certain areas of Burlington. And we know that there have been many efforts made to bring residential property owners into better compliance with this, but there's still some out there, and so perhaps a little more effort needs to be made in this area. I've got some pictures here of about a dozen properties that are in gross violation all over town, some on West Davis Street, East Davis Street, around in historical Burlington, commercial and residential. So I'll turn this over to you all tonight, and hopefully you can come with those. Our new topic, and those were all photos were all taken this weekend in about an hour ride around. Our new topic tonight that we're beginning to work on is slumlord properties and slumlord boarding houses in Burlington. We feel, the work group feels, after studying this and going through this whole process for about a year now, that there's no greater issue that plays into all the categories that we're working on as a work group than this. It plays into beautification, crime, economic development, and all this for Burlington. So yes, that slumlord or a slum landlord is a derogatory term that I'm using, and generally is an absentee or non-caring landlord with multiple properties who attempts to maximize profit by minimizing spending on property, maintenance, and often and usually deteriorating neighborhoods. And we know that traditionally real estate is seen as a long-term investment to most buyers, and especially in the developed world. Most landlords buy property and maintain their properties, even if it proves costly in the short term, to attract higher rents, more desirable tenants, and a better return upon selling. A well-maintained property is worth more to potential buyers. In contrast to this, slumlords do very little or no maintenance on their property and usually do not contract with property management service. Ordinarily, they do just enough to meet minimum local requirements for living, in turn offer low rates to lure tenants who will not and cannot pay higher rent or who might not pass background checks. And it's not uncommon for these properties with little or no down payment to also receive rent in cash to avoid disclosing for tax purposes, providing lucrative short-term income. There is a negative opinion of slumlords, and we blame them for the declining property values and whole neighborhoods of shanties, houses, and slumlords leech on the wealth of the poor with little regard to future generations, the neighborhood, the city, or the people around them. Decay is a natural outcome of this tragedy. And there are three ways to benefit financially from investing in real estate and in rental houses. That's cash flow, cash flow, appreciation, and tax shelter. Most good investors try to maximize their return on investing by taking advantage of all the possible benefits. They can do it with tax strategies, financial planning, and careful purpose of each property with good property management proves for a better return. However, the people that I'm talking about are short-sighted, and they rate the neighborhoods, steal money from property by the cash flow with no thought of the long-term ramifications. Typically, a slumlord looks for an opportunity to buy a structure that's aesthetically challenged property for little or no money, and that kind of a deal is often available from someone who thought something was fairly decent but then milked and mismanaged the property until they can no longer stand to deal with the maintenance problems. And we just had one house torn down on Ireland Street within the last year or so that meets this description. So slumlords are happy to take over junk properties. And when the tenant moves out and leaves it a mess, a mainstream landlord will cry and then clean it up and repair and repaint and try to do a better job next time on their next tenants. A slumlord just lowers the rent on the trash property until some poor soul will take it as it is. And then the same scenario continues with the next and the next and the next. And this downward spiral continues until cash dries up from the last desperate tenant willing or forced to live in squalor. It doesn't take many derelict buildings and houses to take down a neighborhood or even a part of town. This cancer is growing all over the historical part of Burlington. In our April meeting, Police Chief Smythe came to give us a presentation. He was suddenly made aware in our meeting that he was responsible for inspecting boarding houses. He was shocked, and it really got away with him. And much to his credit, he jumped right on it, and since that April meeting has gotten a list and done his job. The city produced a short list of boarding houses registered in Burlington that was dated back to 2007, meaning it hadn't been updated since then. To us, shows a lack of concern for this problem that is growing like a cancer in our city, our historic neighborhoods, and for the lives of people forced to live in these places. For those here tonight that may counter my words about slumlord and slumlord boarding houses, I would like to remind you that as a work group, we are the voice of the people. We came out of the people, and I am in no way asking that people who are trying for people to be displaced from where they're living. That's why we found lawhelpnc.org, an affordable housing resource center of North Carolina, which is a nonprofit organization established in 1966 by Governor Terry Sanford as low-income housing and development to develop affordable housing and provide assistance to community-based, faith-based organizations to help people relocate for all kinds of reasons. This is funded through the Ford Foundation and the NC Fund, which provides relocation assistance to tenants from displaced homes. There are ways to deal with this problem where everybody wins, but ignoring a problem that dates back to a prior century is not going to go away. If all the houses on the short list that exist today passed minimum inspection, this is not acceptable. I know as a licensed North Carolina insurance agent that over half the houses on the list, if an insurance company went out to inspect them, they wouldn't be able to provide insurance for them because they don't meet insurance requirements. And since staffing is such an issue, and this has not been properly dealt with in the last few years, we're strongly recommending that Burlington follow the example of Winston-Salem and over a period of time develop a zero tolerance for this type of housing, with giving property owners 2 or 3 years to convert back to single-family dwellings and giving tenants time to gain assistance to relocate. We're not asking you take out the whole garden, just weed out a couple of bad seeds. Please don't be a council of privilege just because these issues are not in your neighborhoods and are not visible for you on a daily basis, but be a council of legacy that makes a change for the greater good for a better Burlington. We've begun communications with groups like Preservation Durham and Heartbeat of High Point that have dealt with a lot of these same issues, and we'll continue to work with them and find out how other areas are dealing with the same issue. And just remember, it's a known fact that a part of something affects the whole thing. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not affecting the entire thing. Thank you very much.
Questions for Mr. Skinner? Just to make sure we have our work list from your work group to staff and council: transportation, boarding houses, signs, junk front porches, and slumlords?
Crime, did you say crime?
I did not.
Beautification?
Okay. Thank you very much.
No questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Code of Ethics. This time we recognize the city clerk, Ms. Ward.
Members of council, it's my responsibility to remind you of your duty to avoid conflicts of interest in matters that are before us. This time I ask for any potential conflicts concerning tonight's agenda items.
None.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes, June 2nd, 2014, work session, June 3rd, 2014, city council meeting.
So moved.
Motion is second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Adoption of the agenda.
Make a motion that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda. These items are typically non-controversial. If anyone has any questions about the following items, please let us know. Item 1, to appoint Christina Monking to fill the unexpired term of the Historic Preservation Commission. The term expires June 30th, 2015. B, to adopt a resolution to designate authorized agents from the city of Burlington to execute and file applications for federal and/or state assistance for the March 7th, 2014 ice storm. C, to approve the 2014-15 contract for services in the amount of $70,000 with Whitsett Fire Department Incorporated. D, to set a date of public hearing for July 15th, 2014 to consider an economic development project agreement with CS Carolina Incorporated. E, Budget Amendment 2014-49, appropriate donations, recreation programs is spelled out in your agenda. F, Budget Amendment 2014-50, final budget amendment, all funds spelled out in your agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next item is a public hearing. 2, a public hearing has been scheduled to consider amending City of Burlington zoning ordinance text section 32.2.A.D.2, Western Loop Overlay District, exterior lighting standards. This time we recognize Ms. Amy Nelson. Good evening, Ms. Nelson.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. What staff is bringing you tonight is a simple text amendment to correct the formula for calculating exterior lighting in the Western Loop overlay. It seems that the part of the formula 4 times pi was inadvertently left off when it was originally written, so the formula did not work. Our ordinance allows for 2-foot candles, that's a lighting term, at the property line, and this formula will get us to that level of illumination from the light source. The corrected formula now reads F equals L divided by 4 times pi times the distance squared. And the staff-initiated change has the unanimous recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Questions for Ms. Nelson?
I knew that formula was wrong the first time I
I did too, yeah. I thought the same thing.
Richard, you must have worked on that. Yeah, I thought maybe you did, yeah.
Any questions for Ms. Nelson?
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Anyone on this side that would like to speak? Anyone outside that would like to speak? Anyone on this side that would like to speak?
Will be closed the public hearing.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Move to approve the Burlington zoning ordinance text, section 32.2.A.D.2.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose?
I get to do this.
Statement, yes.
The City Council finds that the zoning text amendment is consistent with the City of Burlington's comprehensive land use plan, and that this action is reasonable and in the public interest, in that the amendment is compatible with the current land use plan.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Brings us to item A, or number number 3. A public hearing has been scheduled to consider rezoning from R-15 residential district to CB conditional business district for the use of unified business development, and CO and I conditional office and institutional district for uses specified from the table of permitted uses under office and institutional zoning, with the exception of boarding houses, veterinary offices. The property is located east of University Drive, south of South Church Street, and west of Huffman Lane, as shown on Alamance County Plat Book 76, page 238. An invalid protest petition has been received. This time we recognize Ms. Nelson. Ms. Nelson.
Mr. Mayor, Council, as you can see from your packet, this rezoning request has the recommendation of approval from staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I believe Ms. Marissa West is here to request a postponement for the applicant.
Ms. West, welcome.
Hello, yes, I'm here. The developer of this property is currently working with some adjoining landowners to get an agreement. I know that at the time the protest petition is invalid, but we'd rather have the agreement of all the landowners. So we're asking that the public hearing be continued until July 15th so that agreement can be completed.
Any comments from council?
Move we continue this public hearing to July 15, 2014.
Second.
Got a motion to second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Item number 4, public hearing has been scheduled to consider public transportation. This time we recognize Mike Nunn. Welcome, Mr. Nunn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm not live. I'm not going to go through all the slides. This is the information we spoke about at our work session a few weeks ago, but I do want to go over 2 items. What we're talking about, public transportation. What is public transportation? We've been through this as far as defining and talking about it, but we're talking about a fixed route system. Something that has a route every day, obviously, that goes from a certain point A to a certain point B on a time schedule. These routes would go out, come back in, sort of like a hub, and go back out into the wheel and come back on the fixed route. Just because of geography and time savings and travel, we're looking at downtown Burlington somewhere. It could be on the outskirts of that, it could be right in the middle of downtown, but it's that type of system. 30-minute travel times, meaning if you got on a bus on one of the routes that you could reach your destination within 30 minutes. In some urban areas that goes to upwards of 40 or 45, and we may have that here. Just depends on how it's laid out exactly once we get to that point of making final decisions. It is an option for our local residents. It's not something we are focusing on pulling 80% of people out of their cars. It's something that adds to our options here for transportation. We will coordinate, or do plan to coordinate, with all the existing systems in place, that being ACTA, the Elon Bauer Bus, Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation, as well a Triangle Transit Authority to our east. So we would coordinate our routes and our times and our service with all of those to open up just our service area to areas our east and our west. It is major destinations. It's not going to be designed to go down every neighborhood street or serve every business. I'm going to stop there and just make sure there's no questions about that.
I think the biggest thing there would be the statement of it's not going down every street. And that's my biggest concern about this public transportation conversation, is making sure that the general public understands that this route is not going to be like a public school system where a bus goes every quarter of a mile and stops. It's not going to take place like that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Based on all the models and planning and looking around our state and nation, we've looked at other systems. It's going to be designed from an urban standpoint. What you asked us to do probably 6 to 8 months ago, before we went further, was to go out and talk to other communities. We've done that over the time, made presentations to their councils, and have come to the point where we have Mebane still interested and we have Gibsonville committed at this time. So that's really an update of many months of work, but I can answer any questions from here if you'd like to see more slides. But again, this is the information we discussed at the work session.
Any questions for Mr. Nunn at this point in time? I think there might be some questions that we can ask to review after the public hearing to make sure that everyone that speaks tonight understands some of the terminology and what it represents to them as a citizen of Burlington. Okay?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. Let's have some ground rules before we get started. Obviously, there's a lot of people here that want to speak tonight. We want to make sure that you're heard. We would like to limit your time to 2 minutes, and I'll keep the time for you. If you're here to speak and you just want to walk up and say, my name is so-and-so, I live at wherever, and say, I support, that's great with us. Fine. If someone is going to echo over and over what someone has already stated, that's sort of a waste of time. But we want to be fair. We want to give everyone the opportunity, but we want to make sure that we're also controlling the meeting and time as well. We do not care where you work. We want to know addresses of where you live, period, as a resident. So if you'd state your name, state where you live, and then we can move on. Again, we have 2 minutes. You certainly don't have to use that 2 minutes. But I want to be fair. And like I said, to repeat myself, to make sure we're all on the same page, you can walk up and say, my name is Ronnie Wall, I live at Meadowood Drive, and I support public transportation, or I don't support public transportation. You can sit down. So we understand the importance. This council has listened for a good while to public transportation. So hopefully by the end of the night, we will know one way or the other in the direction that the city of Burlington will be moving on this topic. So hopefully everyone's got the game plan, and we certainly don't need any cheering one way or the other. We want to be respectful, and we just want to go through and give you that opportunity to speak. So, okay, we'll start on this side. Anyone that would like to speak, please come to the mic.
Good evening. My name is George Hill, president of the South Beverly Hills Neighborhood Association, and I live at 236 Highland Avenue, and I'm in total favor of public transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Anyone else on this side that would like to speak?
My name is Clara Burton. I live at 632 North Church Street, and I'm in favor of busing.
Thank you, Master Burton. Anyone else?
Good afternoon. My name is Nanny Harvey, and I live at 439 Lincoln Street, and I am totally in favor of public transportation.
Thank you, Ms. Harvey. Next.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Darlene Troxler Cotton. I live on 113 Palladium Court in Elon. But my interest in public transportation is for my family. My mom is 90 years old. She lives in Beverly Hills, and she has to wait until I get home from work, usually in the evening. And a 90-year-old is pretty tired by the time I get home from work, because she still gets up early like she has a job. And she really needs a way to get to the different places here in Burlington. And she does use the Alamance County Transit Association Authority buses that runs for her on, I think, Wednesdays. But on the other days, like yesterday, she had to get her blood pressure medicine, and she had to wait for me to come and take her to get that blood pressure medicine, which is at Walmart, which is a ways away when you don't have a car. And we really don't want my 90-year-old mother driving in Burlington. Okay, so for people, and I'm sure I'm not the only person with this situation that has an elderly family member that needs to get places when you're not available, because I have to work. Okay, so that is my interest in public transportation. I'd love to see it come back to Burlington.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
We in the broader sense of the word.
Anyone else on this side that would like to speak?
Hello, my name is Caroline Ansbacher. I live at 1132 West Davis Street, and I've been waiting for this for a long time. And I appreciate so much that you have given it such serious consideration, because we really need this. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Ansbacher. It's nice to see you back, too. Ms. Ansbacher was a former council member here several years back, so welcome back. Anyone else on this side that would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Steve Glenn, and this is my buddy Tony Moorfield. And I just want to tell a quick summary of Tony's situation. Tony lives in Burlington on Davis Street, and he rides his scooter to Cummings High School. He's been working there for 13 years, and had his scooter stolen. And I found out about 2 months later that he was walking to work 3.5 miles one way every day. So it'd just be an awesome thing for Tony and anybody else who's in the same situation.
Thank you so much. Tony, would you like to speak? You're good. Thank you. Good to see you, Tony, as well.
Mr. Mayor, Scott Ryan, Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation, just wanted to come and support your decisions this evening. I also look forward to the opportunity for coordination with any local service that you may have, as well as throughout the entire region. So thank you for giving the opportunity, and look forward to being able to work with you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this side that would like to speak?
My name is Beverly Whitter, and I'm visiting now from New York, but I lived here before when the buses did run. And the reason I'm coming today to say I have sisters that have problems getting back and forth to work, and one goes to school and she has problems doing that. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Anyone else on this side that would like to speak?
I went to school with her.
Any?
Hi, I'm Tom Mold, 820 North Gurney in Burlington, and I'm here as a member of a 3-year project that we've partnered with Department of Social Services, Burlington Housing Authority, Allied Churches, Open Door Clinic, United Way, to try to get a sense of the stories of the people who are living at, near, or below the poverty level in our community. And if there's one thing we hear consistently every time we talk to these folks, it is public transportation has got to come. It is the primary obstacle to getting a job, to getting health care, to having a sort of a viable life. You've already heard some stories, personal stories. You're going to hear more tonight, I'm sure. I just want to at least suggest that the few that you hear tonight, multiply that by 1,000. Our project has found lots of those voices. I won't, in 2 minutes, try to give you all of those stories and all of those experiences, though I'm prepared to do so. But I do hope we'll pay very close attention to the very real problems that our community members are facing, where they've got the skills, they've got the drive, no pun intended, the drive to work, they just cannot themselves drive to work. So sure. I very much support this initiative. Thank
Last
you.
name again was?
Mold, M-O-U-L-D.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Anyone else on this side that would like to speak? Anyone in the center that would like to speak?
Good evening. Ian Baltudis, 2516 South Maury Arch, Burlington. I've spoken many times before. As our city continues to grow and expand and our population shifts throughout the city, the buildings, the services that people rely on, we cannot pick those up and move them. Public transportation is the tool through which we connect our citizens with the healthcare services, with the education services, and to the recreation that they need in their community. I support public transit. Thank you for this hearing.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Budd. I live at 324 Hillcrest, and I'm here to support public transportation. And I'm looking forward to the discussions that are coming about as part of the comprehensive plan, because I think when we really look at the issues that are facing the city, so many of them can be addressed with transportation, as far as access to health care, access to education, access to jobs. So I would really recommend that we continue to move forward, and also too remember that not everyone is the same. Between the five of you, on the tax records, you're paying for over 15 cars. Most of our community can't do that. Our crime rate is very high, 2 and 3 times the state average. We need our citizens to have access to education and jobs, because right now they have access to crime.
Anyone else over here that would like to speak? Anyone in the center outside the doors that would like to speak? Tony, stepping out there to make sure they know they have an opportunity to speak.
Hello, my name's Curtis Gentry. I live at 138 Huffine Street. Also, I'm a property owner at 321 South Main Street, downtown Burlington. I'm going to probably be a minority here. I'm kind of actually opposed to this situation. Come to address my concerns about the mass transportation system, because I have a deep concern that we may be jumping into a new bus transportation system that is not cost effective and is going to be a future big drain on taxpayer dollars. So why do we need this public transportation? Well, to transport those people who, in some cases, cannot afford to. But we got to look at some of the comments that you had just talked about prior to the start, which was how much time or where are we going to drive these buses down, and they don't want to drop them off. Currently, we have an ACT system that if you call in, make a reservation, they will pick you up at your door, they'll drop you off at your location, and then pick you back up and drop you right back off. You know, if you have a senior citizens, and there's going to be a lot of them in here talking, they may have to walk 5 and 6 blocks to get to the bus stop. Stand there, maybe in the rain, maybe it's not in a safe neighborhood. They're going to go shopping, they're going to come back, and they're going to have bags in their hands. So, and then there's going to be a safety concern out there. But, you know, the other comment was, they said that, you know, governments, federal and state grants are going to pay for 90% of this. Well, as taxpayers, that state and federal grant is taxpayer money too. And, you know, the government's printing money day by day. We're borrowing money from China. And, you know, it's got to stop somewhere. If we can afford, as taxpayers in the city of Burlington, to support this transportation system, that's fine. But if we're going to jump into this transportation system just because we're going to get a 90% coverage on the initial start of this transportation system, but then our ongoing costs, you know, our labor, our management of the system, you know, how many buses are we going to need to have in standby that have to be ready just in case one bus breaks down? Or maybe that person that goes to work and then suddenly there's a change in weather and we have to cancel the buses, and now how are they going to get home? So, you know, we need to really think about all the smaller things and not just think about, well, we're going to get 90% of our cost footed for the start of this, because it's going to be an ongoing cost. And also, the last thing is, what is our going to be commitment if we do get that 90%? Do we have to stay with it? Can we get out at a certain time if it's not working? Those are the things I want to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the middle that would like to speak?
Becoming the world the same, so come up with you. I'm telling you like it is, Justin.
All right, just state your name and address, please.
My name is Jeanette Watkins. I live at, Fairfax Drive, 611I, with Burlington Housing Authority.
Okay.
Ever since I've been in Burlington, we've been having transportation problem, and so I'm for the bus.
You too. Thank you so much.
He said 2 minutes, I couldn't do nothing.
Just for the record, it was 16 seconds. All right. Shh. Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Reed. I live at 2439 Glencoe Street in Burlington. And I'm here, have come to you in the past in support of this issue, and I'm coming again today as a recent graduate of Leadership Elements. We graduated just last month. And this was the #1 issue that came up every single month when we met, no matter what the topic was. Public transportation came back and swept through every single issue every month. When we met at the end of the year and we identified the top issue facing our city and the county, public transportation remained the top issue, and it was the one that we wanted to see something happen with as it moved forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Next.
Mayor Wall and City Council, thank you for having this hearing this evening. My name is Ann Durr, and I'm a resident at 2561 Glenkirk Drive in Burlington. I'm a transplant from New York, Long Island, where we had a bus system that our family was very dependent upon. My mother didn't drive, and as a child, we took the bus system everywhere. I think it gave her the quality of life and independence that she needed to live the life that she did. And I completely support this system and hope it passes and all the hard work that's gone into it.
Thank you, Ms. Strong.
Hi, my name is Jody Thompson. I'm at 110 Sunset Drive in Elon. I'm also a student at Alamance Community College. And recently with the storm, my car got hit. And not having public transportation, which I find is weird coming from Massachusetts, I had no way to school. And there's other students that attend, whether they're 18 or 50, that do not have a car, have the same struggle that I faced. And it was hard to rely on friends and families, which mostly friends is not family between me and my daughter. And it was a struggle to get to and from school. And having public transportation, I think, would help a lot of students that need education and that those that go there. So I'm for that.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else in the center?
Hello, my name is Donna Hodges, and I work at Allied Churches, 206 North Fisher Street. I'm a caseworker, and Caroline is a caseworker as well.
My name's Caroline Taylor. I'm the other case manager at Allied Churches, 206 North Fisher Street. A couple weeks ago, our executive director, Kim, spoke to you all about a man named Barry who walked over 6 miles each way to work from the shelter. There is another resident that comes to mind. Her name's Diana, and she would walk actually from the shelter to the McDonald's on Main Street in Graham every day, leaving at about 3 in the morning just so she could get there on time and work all day to come back to the shelter. And I don't really think we need to go into all of the residents' details, but public transportation is one of the biggest barriers that our residents face and many other people in the community face. The jobs are there and they're willing to work, they just can't get there. So this would be unbelievable. Yes. So.
Thank you, ladies.
All right, thank you.
Anyone outside that would like to speak? Mr. Laws, anyone else outside?
I think we got everybody out here, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Anyone on this side that would like to speak?
Mayor, City Council, Eric Henry. I do live in Snow Camp, but I've had a business in Burlington for over 30 years, and I've lived in this community for over 50 years. And I think what we're talking about tonight is a future for a vision for the future of our community. I've had the opportunity to travel a lot in this country, and I understand the power that public transit has to a community. When I travel, that's why I don't like to rent a car. I like to get on mass transit. I also have the opportunity to be on the board with Burlington Downtown Corporation. Also as part of starting company shops. Again, these things, what we're talking at my business, TS Designs, what kept us in the apparel business in Burlington, in Alamance County the last 30 years, is a change and a vision for the future. Our future is changing. I encourage your support for public transit for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council. I'm Diane Heath. I live at 3027 Maple Avenue, and I'm also a board member at the Women's Resource Center in Alamance County. Many of our clients don't have transportation, making it difficult for them to participate in workshops, job searches, or take advantage of educational opportunities at Alamance Community College. One example of a lot that I could share with you this evening is a family that we're currently working with. Already a successful student, the daughter is graduating from high school with honors and plans to go to ACC to continue her studies. However, out of reach of the family and beyond the resources of the WRC is transportation, which will allow her to continue down a path to self-sufficiency. If the daughter's path stops now, according to the 2013 U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, she will fall into the second highest group of the unemployed. Even if she could get a job, her median weekly earnings will be $651. At the very least, let's provide her the opportunity to achieve an associate's degree in order to improve her job prospects. Together, we can move the daughter from a group that has an unemployment rate of 7.5% to a group with 5.4% unemployment. Not only do her chances for a better job improve, but her wages will increase by 20%. On behalf of the Women's Resource Center, we are grateful for your consideration of the positive impact this vitally important missing tool can make in the lives that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heath.
My name is Tyrone Whitfield. I live at 2629 East Simpson Road in Burlington. I live in the Green Level section of Burlington, and I support mass transit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is David Sproul. I live at 1809 Hilton Road. I support transit. I'm in this county.
Thank you, Mr. Sproul.
How you doing? My name is Tiffany Miller. I live at 750 Sharp Road, and I support the transportation, but I also want to say, like, where I live at, a lot of people's issue is getting to work. It's not that they don't want to work, but they can't get there.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else on this side that would like to speak?
My name is John Stubblefield. I live at 127 Hillside Drive in Burlington. I'm a senior citizen, and I support transportation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stubblefield.
My name is Larry Covington. I do not live in Burlington. I live in Graham, which unfortunately is not supporting public transportation at this point, but I pastor the Ebenezer United Church of Christ, 734 Apple Street in Burlington, some 800 or so congregants. It depends on which Sunday it is. But some people have obviously shared that they are not for public transit, and obviously I can understand. But I do want to say this, that one of the reasons why a lot of people say they don't want it, or some I've talked to, is because it will not yield profit. But there are some things that progressive municipalities should provide that's just good for the public, like parks or bike trails, or jogging trails, swimming pool, dog tracks, whatever. They profit without being profitable because they profit a healthy community. So I think for the good of all of the citizens, in which you all have been, of course, deputized to serve all of the citizens, that we would support public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Covington. Anyone on that side that would like to speak?
Mayor Wall and Council, I'm April Durr, and I know I'm a familiar face that doesn't live in this community but works in this community and spends most of my hours here as the Director of Healthy Alamance at 319 North Graham Hopedale Road in Burlington. On behalf of FAST and Healthy Alamance, I just want to thank you all for considering this, because some of us have been here before you for over 7 years now talking about this issue, the statistics, the evidence, the community assessment, and all the great needs. So I just wanted to thank you for having this, and I wanted to make sure you received the letter on behalf of the hospital where the VP of Operations has offered funding to help with bus stops and bus stations. So thank you very much.
Let's see that copy of the letter. Thank you.
We're going to miss not having you here.
So hopefully we can be known as the, not the largest city in the state anymore without transit, and we could be known for all the great things we're doing instead. So I look forward to that.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Nikki Ratliff. I know you don't want to know who I work for. I am a resident of Graham, but every day I have the privilege of working for the 395 adults and 456 children who live in Burlington Public Housing. Our tenants want the same things that many of us in the room want. They're capable, they're engaged, and they're energetic about their futures. They need a barrier removed. That barrier is transportation. To date, we assist residents with things such as scholarships. We have to provide a transportation voucher so that students can get to school. If we were to remove that transportation voucher so that students can rely on public transportation, we could provide more actual dollars to assist more residents to get degrees, to increase their earnings. Right now, our tenants, some of them use ACTA, but ACTA isn't affordable when you're working a minimum wage job at part-time hours. So ACTA is an option, but it's not viable for our residents. We would like to see our residents afforded more opportunities to further their education, to obtain job training skills, and to get better employment by working outside of their local communities and moving into other municipalities who would share in this transit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tracy Salisbury. I live at 2127 Canterbury Drive, and I'm the director of the Open Door Clinic. And right now, 25 to 50% of our patients are not able to make their appointments because of transportation. 85% of our patients are diabetic, hypertensive, COPD. Two stories that stand out to me particularly is we have one patient, a diabetic patient that was not coming to our appointments. She had not had her insulin for a month. We sat her down, talked to her, asked her why she was not coming to our appointments, and she busted out crying and said that she had a neighbor that used to bring her to her appointments, but he refused to bring her any longer unless she would have sex with him so that she could get there. Another patient had a diabetic ulcer on his big toe. He had that toe removed and found out that he was walking all the way from this side of town over to the medication assistance program across from Turntime Middle School just to get his medications. So we have started working with some local pharmacies so that we can help these patients get their medications when they're having trouble getting over to the medication assistance program, which has increased our medication bills by 25%. So I'm totally in support of public transportation for health care.
Thank you, Ms. Salisbury. Anyone else from this side that would like to speak?
Good afternoon. My name is Ed McDowell. I live at 3571 Garden Road. I pastor church at 1321 Jackson Street, Visitors Chapel. I just want to say, I wasn't going to say anything, but I can't help it. I think about the number of people who want to get to Alamance Crossing to shop and can't get there. I think about the number of people who live in the inner city who cannot get where they need to go. I know that ACTA works for some people, but, you know, I understand that ACTA costs $5 to come from Snow Camp to Compaq Plaza. It also costs $5 to go from Hat Street to Compaq Plaza. I mean, that's just not right, is it? No. I don't think so. We need public transportation.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Greg Hargrave. I live at 5331 Washington Terrace, McLeansville, North Carolina. I also live at 421 Fulton Street, Burlington, North Carolina, where I pastored for 29 years. Every board, every meeting that I seem to have been in, public transportation has always come up. I think it's something that will really enhance our community, and I just want to say that I support it as a pastor in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else on this side that would like to speak?
The Reverend David R. Williams, retired rector of the Episcopal Church of the Holy Comforter. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to see that this decision, this visionary decision, is finally might happen. And I've been here for 30 years and waiting for this and seen it from many parts of this community. So I thank you for taking it seriously, and I hope it passes.
Thank you, Reverend Williams.
It's obvious why the Episcopal Church makes you wear robes.
You just couldn't let it go, could you?
It was hanging there.
That's the only reason why I take from minister. Wear shorts and duck shoes, and jackets. I like that. Yeah, we told him that the other day. Yeah.
And we were doing well.
Seeing down here.
Anyone else on this side that would like to speak?
It was reasonable decorum up to that.
Anyone else? Anyone on this side? Last call. Yes.
My name is Ralph Gillum, and I'm the Director of Alamance County Transportation Authority. And I would like to say that I am in favor of public transportation. I've been with Alamance County Transportation for about 3 years, and I see the need for transportation in the urban area every day. Alamance County Transportation is equipped with special lifts that particularly focus on the needs of those that really need help with their transportation. In the past, however, we have served as Burlington and the surrounding areas public transportation, and we still do that today. Someone mentioned cost of ACTA, and it is true that general public does cost $5 for a one-way trip. We do have other programs that are supported by grants that are less expensive, but in the scheme of things, when you're driving vehicles that get 7 or 8 miles to a gallon, it is expensive. Public transportation that we're looking at here would be a much more economical way to transport those that can move around without assistance, that need special assistance, and I think that that would be a big boost for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillum. Anyone else? Anyone outside that would like to speak?
To Mayor Wall and to the council members. Interestingly, today I was in Fayetteville, my hometown and the place of my birth, assisting a relative getting back late. Everywhere I traveled in the city there were these burgundy and silver buses of the Fayetteville Metropolitan Transit System, FMTS. Of course, this wasn't my first visit home, but today I paid closer attention, struggling to keep my eyes on the road. I've seen and rode these buses from my adolescence up. My sister and I had access to the downtown areas, to stores, and to the movie theater, and without having to depend on anyone, our parents or anyone else. It gave us a feeling of independence and maturity. But today, the excitement was visualizing riding through Burlington via a fixed route urban transportation system, seeing buses complete with passengers traveling throughout the county. Oh yes, and the Fayetteville buses had lettering on the side that read Clean Air Hybrid Electric Bus. Just wanted to mention that. Since March of 2013, with the initiation and formulation of the Burlington Community Work Group, up until now, public transportation has been and still is my passion. It would, one, facilitate job training opportunities, jobs and better jobs, and lower the unemployment rate. Two, it would provide access to education and career training to better oneself. Three, it would create financial stability and therefore boost the economy. Four, it would cause less pollution of the environment and gas usage by parking cars and using the bus. Five, it would benefit nonprofits in transporting their clients and getting assistance and
Thank you, ma'am.
handling, if you will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ms. Curry.
Curry.
Ms. Curry.
Emma Curry.
Sorry to be rude, but thank you. Anyone else? Last one. Thank you.
Better late than never.
Absolutely.
Y'all remember me from a meeting I came to a little over a year ago. I'm Mr. Bradley's daughter that ran the Amco Station Choir Church in Holt, Burlington. My name is Nina Lynn Wilson, and I live at 522G Stellar Street, Burlington. And I would like to give y'all the information that every time I have to go to the hospital, if a friend can't take me, I have to call the taxi to come and get me. Round trip is $32. Now that, I can't afford that every time I have to go, because that is just outrageous. But if we had a city bus system, I could get on the bus and go straight to the hospital for nothing, or for half price, however y'all decide for senior citizens to go on. So keep that in your minds, and y'all have a blessed day.
Thank you, ma'am.
Adios.
Appreciate it. Mr. Mayor, I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Mr. Nunn, I think I would, just to help us answer some questions so that the general public can understand some of the terminology, some of our concerns in reference to making sure that the general public understands. So, questions or comments for Mr. Nunn?
Mr. Nunn, there's going to be an interface between ACTA and this bus system, is that correct?
That's correct. We would work with their...
And so they're not going away, but they're actually going to supplement some of the comments that these folks have made and the concerns they've raised pertaining to how to get folks that from a spot, if they can't walk 4 or 5 blocks, is the concept that ACTA picks them up and brings them to the
There's two ways to do that. Typically, if you're not able to navigate the system, that means go to the bus stop, get on the bus, get off of the bus. If you're not able to do that, you would qualify for what we call paratransit. And that will allow ACTA to go door to door, just as they are now, but that would be provided by the transit system. Now, that would only be provided in the areas our routes operate and only on the days and hours that this system would operate.
That was one of the questions I had to explain paratransit to the general public to understand. And what is that, if you're going down Church Street, is it 3/4 of a mile both sides?
3/4 of a mile from the route.
From the route.
From our route, so it is not citywide.
Right.
It is from the routes that are ultimately going to be decided out from those routes on both sides, 3/4 of a mile, that ACTA will continue to provide that service to those that can't navigate. Now, that is a certified and qualified decision made by a medical professional. It's not just an arbitrary staff making that decision.
But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's what's required.
It's required by federal law to have that, yes, sir.
Okay.
In order to be a recipient of the 5307 funds, but ACTA unilaterally and within their own guidelines could operate whatever boundaries they wanted to.
Sure, yes. Yeah, they would be a service provider to this transit system. They would fulfill that need to the fixed route system.
The 5307 funds, let's talk about that in reference to the history of when it started. I've heard people in the general public speak about, the federal dollars decreasing and the concern of what happens if that does occur.
Sure. It's one of the oldest federal grants by the government. It is a grant that is provided to the Charlottes, the Atlantas, the LAs. We're in that program. This isn't a special grant for Burlington or Alamance County. It's something that would affect nationwide as things change, increase, or decrease. It's something we don't somewhat compete for. We don't apply for it. It's an allocation based on our population and our density.
And during our conversation, you said it started back in the early 60s?
That's probably a little bit before then, but I went back and looked and started finding evidence of it at that time. It's probably a little bit earlier.
And the amount of that grant today is what, 1.8 something?
1.8 million. Yes.
Okay.
That grant, if it's not used, does not go back to the taxpayers a refund. It's reallocated to other systems.
In our state.
It's going to be used for public transit regardless, whether it's to our benefit or someone else's.
Correct. There's 17 urban areas in our state, as we've talked before. 16 of those have some type of public transportation. They all have their 5307 allocation and benefit from the dollars that we aren't using for that as well. So it's used, but it's just not used in our area.
How about explain to the general public in reference to how the funding of that grant can be utilized from the operation to the capital?
Yes, the startup capital that was mentioned, it is provided in 80% federal funds for that, 10% state, and 10% local. So what we call startup, that would be your equipment. That's your large expenses. Will require about a 10% local match. And we're in the $300,000 range for the 5, possibly 6 buses that we talked about in our planning discussion. Then as you move out of startup and begin operations, you receive the operations part of that grant, and that's a 50% match. So anything you do to drive the buses, operate the buses, maintain the buses is a 50% match local and 50% match from that grant.
All right, the total cost for a year?
What we're looking at now is about 1.4 million total. So 620, 630 local will be required for that to get another additional 630 to go with it. Anything you pull from that grant, you have to match it with 50%. But the system we're looking at, local expenses are about $620,000.
So the numbers that you gave us earlier, the 419?
Yes.
Okay.
That's if you want to talk about our options.
Yeah, let's talk about
our options.
All right.
I really would rather do that from the slide because I don't want to get it incorrect.
What I want to make sure of is the numbers that we talk about tonight are numbers that stay very consistent for at least a 3-year period, with the exception of the gas going up or down.
Right.
I understand that.
Yeah, I'm not going to stand here.
What we can't have, if we move forward with this, we can't have a number tonight, and then 6 months from now, a year from now, that number changes.
Well, the challenge you're going to have, Mayor and Council, is your time. If you continue to wait for equipment and purchasing items, and most of you are in business, you realize it's going to go up. So, and fuel is going to be the item that's going to impact you the most. We've talked about that.
I understand that.
Yeah. So,
okay.
I mean, time is an issue you're battling with increasing cost. The 2 options we've talked about as we've worked through this system, since Graham decided not to participate, to get to Mebane via the park and ride and ACC, Burlington's cost would be $419,000. And then if you just did Burlington to Mebane, it would be $346. That means you would not be doing anything outside of Burlington.
So the route to ACC is worth $72,500.
Correct.
And Mike, I realize this is somewhat controversial with Graham not participating, but with many of the workshops we've heard, the need to get to the county court square is important. The 72,000 route that you've indicated for additional cost to get to ACC, if the option was to go to just a courthouse square and ground only, and then go to the ACC campus, is that number somewhat close to that, do you think, then, or how much would that?
It's I mean, if you're going to go to the courthouse and then to ACC,
yes,
that's the mileage is very similar. Instead of going directly to the interstate to ACC, you would go to Graham and hit the interstate. The mileage is very similar, so we're in the same estimation.
Mike, if this is passed tonight, what do we look at as a startup time? A year?
At a minimum. It's going to depend on the rate of decision-making and ordering equipment and things of that nature. Yeah, you're a minimum of that. As we've talked over the last several years, you're 12 to 18 months.
So if this should pass tonight, it's not going to start tomorrow?
No, but there's going to be a lot of work that starts. I mean, as we've talked, I mean, so everyone realizes that's a good point. I mean, you've got to pick a color for a bus. You've got to name the system. You've got to pick the interior. You've got to pick the technology. We've got to determine and verify these routes. We've got to talk about fare. We've got to talk about emergency processes. I mean, we've got a lot of things to do that have been done by others before. We're not recreating the wheel, but it's just things we're going to have to step through.
Mike, is one other thing that, we talked about earlier, and that's the form of governance, for this. I mean, I've asked a question before, what would be best, and that needs to be done early on, doesn't it?
Correct.
Because I'm assuming that the form of governance would play a big role in the issue you have just identified, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we've got to bear it in mind, whatever decision is made early on, we've got to make some determination, about that, because just deciding, you can't be running all different directions. You got to have some organization about it, and I think the form of governance is really a critical issue, so.
Days of operation, time of operation, because I keep hearing the stories from the different people throughout this ordeal that we've discussed for several months now in reference to getting off at the train station and walking from the train station down Main Street 6 blocks at midnight.
Yeah, we have gone on planning assumptions. We've looked at Monday through Friday, typical 5:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. I can tell you by experience, the first thing we did was adjust that in other communities, because you look at your needs. You talk specifically with these agencies. You look at, as we had in the past many years ago, you had some shift work. You may have some retail issues now or some education issues that if you ran 30 more minutes in the evening or started 30 minutes later in the morning that you would pick up. Your goal with this, as you know, is to get as many riders as we can.
Right, and that leads into the next question, a projection on the ridership.
We looked at past systems. We've looked heavily at Concord and Kannapolis. They were the last system that started up. That's been almost 10 years ago, actually. In the early part, we looked at $15,000 a month, and they were right on that. Those are projections. I mean, that's all we had to look at right now. We've looked at our population. That's where they were 10 years ago.
When you hear horror stories like, I think it was in Guilford or Greensboro, the 2 million black hole, why?
Well, that was a different type of transportation in Guilford County, different type of transportation. Also, it's a very expensive type of transportation, as you heard from ACTA. Fixed route systems, typically when you hear cutbacks and changes and overruns, local match approval may not be as much as it was before, and there needs to be changes. So the only way you change transit or reduce your costs is reduce your service. So when you hear those stories,
likewise, if you increase services, you're going to
cost
increase.
goes up.
That's right.
Yeah, and every year it's like any other service you provide. You'll deal with that decision point.
We start the process, find ridership is not exactly what we want with the routes. Any concerns from you in reference to changing routes at midstream?
Yes, sir. That's somewhat the beauty of it. You don't want to go in there and change it every other month. You want to give it some time, but you definitely, I would 90% you're going to change or tweak your routes 6 months, 8 months into it. If you start off and things are really bad or you've missed something, it's not like putting a pipe in the ground. You know, you've got streets to change and you just change that route. But you have to go through a process. You have to get input. You don't just do things because you want to create something that's solid and consistent for your riders.
Marketing plan.
Yes, that'll be first and foremost, marketing and education. You'll go through a process of how to ride the bus. You know, where does it go? How do I get on? How do I pay? That's materials, that's websites, that's speaking. Just like anything you would roll out as a city, you would want to do a large marketing plan for it because that's where you're going to gain your interest, your education, and your comfort with something new.
Farebox.
Farebox, it's a decision. We've projected $1 in the plan. There's other communities that go up to $2. You know, you can, whatever decision's made, you can look at different fares around the state. I think maybe $2.75 to $3 for a fixed route system is pushing the envelope, but you've heard tonight, there's a $5 fare already in place for one-way trips. So, you know, you again look at that and make that assessment, but typically it's around $1.
And what we've discussed, four routes?
That's what we're talking about, 4 routes.
The operational cost, the match funds, obviously there's lots of sources to generate that revenue. There's rental use tax, there's registration fee, surcharge, there's even certain legislation that can add sales tax, as I understand it. But typically the registration's what most are doing.
The transit, and we discussed that, there we go. The transit vehicle tax was provided by the legislature as all those funds must be spent on public transportation. That adds $5 per registered vehicle inside the city limits. When you pay your taxes or your registration now, it would just be another line item for $5, and that would go only to public transportation. And as is proposed here, that would raise about $205,000 for the city of Burlington.
I want to ask you this, you know, I guess with the state, with the tag system, you have independent contractors doing that. Would they potentially charge us a fee for?
You'll have an administrative fee. They're collecting things already now, so it's not going to be some new astronomical out-of-line fee, but there'll be an admin fee for collecting that.
Is that number of vehicles in Burlington, I know here in 2012 was right at 41,000. Is that still pretty good, or is that?
I hope it would have gone up a little bit, but that's what our baseline is.
The 18 up here.
Yeah. Good point.
What is the transit fee on the registration? I know Orange County has
sales tax.
They have sales tax. Do they have any registration at all?
I'm not sure. I don't know if they do. As a county, I'm not sure if they do. They may have in Hillsborough or Chapel Hill. You know, municipalities use that as a tool, most of them, because that's really the main tool available by legislation. It's something they can do as a council. It's made at the local level.
What would happen if we agreed to do it tonight and we set a 3-year window of reviewing at the end of 3 years, and that year would start when we actually rolled out the first bus? And at the end of that 3-year period, we had a benchmark of the first year of ridership and costs and that sort of thing. And we decided as a council that it just wasn't working. We were wasting money. Money was going down the dark hole. And I realized we're not going to make money. And I realize this is a service. I understand that. But I'm speaking of large sums of money. What happens at that point? Of disposal of equipment or what?
Yeah, the equipment, useful life would still be available. That's basically what it is. But in typical cases, as I talked about this and asked about this, if other systems need that equipment, it's typically it's a transfer of equipment. If another public agency uses that, if you sell it and you make funds on it, they want the investment they put into it back if it doesn't meet its useful life, which at 3 years it would not. So you take that off the top, pay them back, and if you have anything else left, that would be it.
Okay, I've asked my questions. Anyone else have questions? I think that obviously we need to decide, one, if we're going to move forward with public transportation. Number two, as Councilmember Ward stated about the governance, also we need to understand, is this going to be strictly Burlington? Are we going to the courthouse? Are we going to ACC? We know what Gibsonville is going to do. We don't know about Mebane. We know what Graham's going to do, and I don't think we've heard anything from Elon at this point in time either. So
Ms. Mayor, do you envision us making decisions on those issues? Or are we just up or down vote on whether to proceed with a public transportation system?
Well, I think it's definitely an up or down vote, one way or the other tonight, about which way we proceed. And then if we can, and Mike, I would ask you for your advice, are these decisions that need to be made tonight in reference to going to the courthouse, going to Graham? How do we bring Gibsonville into the mix? And what happens if Mebane joins in August, for example? Is that a big deal tonight?
I think certainly your decision is going forward, and then number two is governance, so whomever knows who to work with and how to take step one, step two, step three.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add to that, the form of governance, it may be premature to decide on that tonight because there are going to be some pros and cons to each method, and they need to be stated to you, and some discussion had about how the mechanics of each system would work.
Okay. I guess the last question that I would have, Mike, in reference to back to Gibsonville, back to, well, not even Gibsonville, but back to the courthouse, to ACC. Bottom line to it, 419 is the magic number, if indeed we go to those two within reason, somewhere in that area.
That's our planning goal, our
Okay.
estimate from the study, yes. Based on car prices of
Okay,
today.
and with that being said, then let me do some math here quickly. If we do not go to ACC or Graham, that number goes from 419 to 346, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so if we go to both locations, the 419 minus the license fee, which brings in 205, then our cost is 213, somewhere in that range?
Yes.
So the range goes from 213 to 419, somewhere in there?
Well, you're still going to take, your 205 is going to come into play on either number.
Right, exactly. Okay.
And then fare box on top of that, which is not
Farebox
going
on
to be
top of that.
much. And then if
No.
we pursued any of the other sources, like a rental use tax or something, could further lower the matching portion of what we do.
Right.
To echo what Mr. Bateman said, I think the decision on whether or not to proceed with the system is what's most important. Governance would be step two, and along with that would come any funding sources for the match, which I think is going to be extremely critical to not burden the general fund and impose some unjust taxation there.
To follow up on that, what you're suggesting that we vote in principle whether to go, where it's a go or no go, right?
Yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Nunn?
Would like to just make some comments, Mr. Mayor, but follow up on what other council members have said. And let me just say this for once. I want to commend, Mayor, I want you to commend you on this because you've been criticized that it's taken a long time to get this issue to a vote. And I don't criticize you at all. I don't criticize this council because I think this is an expansion on the part of the city of Burlington like we've not had in an awful long time regarding, we've prided ourselves on basic quality public services in this town. We don't take a second seat to anybody in areas of recreation and fire and police. And so if we're going to venture into something like this, I think we all want to do it and do it with some quality to it and some class to it. And I think we've gone about it the right way. I think we've got an awful lot of input. We've looked at the numbers and we've gone back and looked at the numbers. And I think we're going into it with our eyes open. I'm in favor of it. I think it's time that we move forward. This is not the 50s and 60s anymore. We still have people that fuss and talk about how the bus system was back then, but life's different in this country, and the needs are different, and the costs are different involved, and I think this is a system that, frankly, yes, it is a money transfer, just like so many services that we provide. I used to use a lot more of the recreation facilities than I used to for the city, but this is not an a la carte sort of, don't look at me like that. This is not an a la carte system. We pay, and all in all the services go together into making your town and your community a better place within which we all live. And this is an expansion of services that I think that will be something that we're going to look back on and be thankful that we went this route, and also that we approached it the way we did. I agree with Mr. Butler. I think we need to look at all of the different options as far as funding this is concerned, to the extent that we can use user fees. And when I say user fees, I don't necessarily mean just at the box on the bus. I also mean the transit vehicle tax as well as the general vehicle tax. If the legislature had not intended for us to use that, they wouldn't have made it enabled us to do so. So I think we ought to look at all of those things, to the extent that we can avoid funding this by way of ad valorem taxes on a year-to-year basis. I think that would be great, but we can't. We know we're going to have to put some ad valorem taxes into it on a yearly basis. How do you define success in this? I think Mr. Mayor Wall referred to this, is that, you talk about looking back in 3 years. How do you define success? Now, it's not going to be a profit, no more so than the police department as a profit earning endeavor or the fire department. It is a service. You can try to control your cost and still provide a quality service involved. And I think we can do that. Mr. Ward hit right on it, and I want to say this right now. I appreciate the mayor going to and asking, and staff working to deal with all the other cities around us. As a practical matter, a system like this probably should be in the county system, the county government, because it does go beyond the city of Burlington's limits. It goes to all the municipalities. In reality, it goes outside the corporate limits too, if you had a true broad bus system. But that's not going to happen, and this city council recognizes that. So along those lines, I'm with Mr. Ward. I think governance is very important. Frankly, at this point in time, I want it to be successful. I would like to see Burlington make this, have just like our planning and zoning, where we would have a advisory committee and make this a department of the city, so that we can have some autonomy with it and we can make it work and make it work efficiently without having to be concerned about having to run it through neighboring towns and such. But that's just my opinion. That's something we will address as we go forward. In a lot of ways, I'm kind of excited about this. I think it's an opportunity that Burlington can show its stuff like we have on so many other areas.
Any other comments?
I do. I want to make a couple of comments. And Mayor, you said it best, and Mayor Pro Tem Huffman, this council's done its homework for for many years on this particular subject. There was a study in 2006, a Parsons-Brinkerhoff study, that I just notated. Got a copy of it here. That's where it started, Cherry Consulting. 2009, URS, Hayden Harmon Foundation did a study. There was a follow-up study to that. There's an NCDOT study in 2009, and then URS did another follow-up in 2012. So I've said it on numerous occasions, is that the need of this service has been credibly established since 2006. There have been many nuances to it, but it's certainly grown support and grown in scope and purpose. Reverend Covington said it best, progressing municipalities, it is an added service. Coming on council in 2007, I was probably not as supportive of the topic as I became once I sort of immersed myself in these studies. And Leadership Alamance, a great comment about Leadership Alamance, and I was there a couple of weeks ago at their graduation speaking, and that's the future leaders of this community, and they've certainly had it on their agenda for many years. And I think, Mr. Gillum, it goes oftentimes unspoken, the thankfulness to ACTA and what ACTA does. 76,000 plus trips annually. At least 3 or 4 times in my tenure on the board of ACTA, that organization about went away, should have went away financially. The impact on this community would be tremendous if something like that was to happen. This service that we're talking about providing today will enable 5307 funds to support ACTA at a higher level, to support ACTA at a deeper level, so that what they're providing can be stabilized and be consistent moving forward in the future. And Mr. Gillum's done a great job, as Dennis Williams did before him, but over 76,000 trips annually. And I think, Mayor Pro Tem, to define success, you define success when you see a need and you address it and you resolve it. And I think that's what defines it. And I'm just so thankful for Mike Nunn that he's not refused to speak to any of us, because he now rehearses this speech by memory. Those slideshows, he just keeps changing the date and going over them and over them and over them. So, Mike, thank you for your patience and working with us. I don't know of a more patient man in America at leading a group along to help them understand something. It's a complicated issue, and it's one that this council did its homework on, so I appreciate everyone's efforts in it as well.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I would say, Mr. Mayor, that I think this is another tool in Burlington's bag of economic incentives to get people to come to Burlington. It's a driver to get people to work, to get jobs, to help the economy. It's a place where people can get to medical services. When I was a child, and I guess maybe 1 or 2 of us up here rode the bus at one time or another, it was fun to ride it. It was fun to ride. I rode it from Glen Raven to Graham and stayed all day and caught it back to Glen Raven. But that was the fun part. The cost was minimum, but it gave us a way to get around. And it's one thing that we need here in this town now. You look at the east side of Burlington, that basically the mass transit is really needed. And with this mass transit system, if it's voted for tonight, then we have an opportunity to do that. I think also, too, I spoke to Mr. Harmon sitting in the office that we talked about the bus routes. Healthy Alamance is a big part of this. We give passports to people if they have to walk a couple of blocks to get to the bus stop. It's an incentive for these guys to be healthy by walking to the bus stop. It's a driver. And I'm appreciative for Healthy Alamance stepping up to take part of this, and Mr. Harmon as well. But the citizens of Burlington, if this passes tonight, this city council has stepped out to provide to you something that's needed in the city. And we appreciate your efforts to come forward to speak tonight, to say that there were only 1 or 2 that were opposed, but the majority were in favor. So with you guys being in favor of this, and if this council votes for it, then the only thing I can ask you to do is please ride the bus.
I want to say you guys have been outstanding tonight as far as showing respect for one another and your presentation. My problem has been right up here. Any other comments from council? Both. Any other comments?
One comment, Mayor, if I could, and I was listening to the remarks tonight, and I would like to join in thanking all of you, because you did a great job. You stated your case, and in my profession, you like people to get up and state their case. I'm for transportation. That's pretty clear. And I was thinking back over the remarks, and Reverend Covington made a remark, said, you can, the system may not be profitable, but the city will profit. And the bottom line, that's what we're about up here. We want the citizens in this city to profit. And we think, and if I'm getting a sense of the council, we think the city will profit, by public transportation.
Thank you. Any other comments? I would say one last thing in reference to the different studies that's taken place over time. And I do appreciate the patience of many, many people that have been involved with sending us information, sending the emails and stuff. Sometimes you have to sit back and think, if something's been on the table for such a long period. Why has it not been moved forward? And it takes 3 votes to move something forward. So just a reminder in the future, it's something that lasts a while, so. Okay, any other comments? Public hearing has already been closed.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve public transportation.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Culmination of all the efforts.
Finances work. Let's go. I got you. That's right. You got the I Love Burlington? Ride the bus.
See you. Squirrel. See you, buddy.
Hey, Dave. How you doing? Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, end of August.
Nice nails.
Okay, as we move forward,
Thank you.
Hey, Caroline, good to see you.
Caroline, how are you? Thank you. Love you, girl. Love you. Good to see you.
next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda will be public comment period. This time we'd recognize Kim Crawford in reference to boarding houses.
Here's the guy.
Hey, Ram, how are you?
Happy good to see you.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you.
Oh, good, thank you.
I think it,
They sort of interesting. I had a lot of people private, come to that. They should come on that.
Ms. Crawford.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's a thing that has to be done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's the nature of where we are in the world, bottom line. And nobody, I don't think anybody would ever think about this as a big problem.
Done.
this is public comment period, and Ms. Kim Crawford, welcome.
Thank you. Mayor and City Council, first, thank you very much for that very positive vote. As you know, that helps our residents at the shelter very much. However, I am here just to give you a different perspective on boarding houses. You know, Allied Churches believes in decent, safe, and affordable housing, and we believe that that's a human right. We also support the right for private property, but recognize the communities and government have an obligation to ensure housing needs are met for all. You know, I can keep reading, but I'm not going to. You know, I think that Allied Churches, you know, of course, we don't like slum landlords either. Our people that come to the shelter, citizens of Burlington, they deserve safe, decent housing. And it doesn't matter what your income level is for that. We have seen deplorable housing, whether it's a one-bedroom, whether it's two-bedroom, or it's a boarding house. Boarding houses are one of the primary options for our low and no income residents. If we were to eliminate boarding houses altogether, where is that flood of people going to go? We have 96 beds. Allied Churches houses the homeless and feeds the hungry. We have 96 beds. And we do everything we can for this community to help people get off the street with a safe place to stay and help them move on. About 75% of the people that come to Allied churches don't come back because we work with them, and we work with them diligently with our case managers like Caroline and Ms. P, who work with our residents so they don't have to come back to the shelter. Boarding houses are one of our primary options. Absolutely, some of them are horrible, and we wouldn't want any of our residents to move in there, and we encourage them not to. What we're simply asking is, let's take a look at this, and let's look at what this community, and as we said, how we profit as a community, how we profit as a city, and how we treat all of our residents. We recognize that with the buses. We also need to recognize that with housing. I think that we do need to look at some of these landlords. They should not be allowed to do business in this wonderful community. But let's not throw the bathwater out with the baby. Our people need safe places to live, and boarding houses are one of those options. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Next, Caroline Taylor, topic boarding houses. Welcome, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. Good evening. Like Kim said, my name is Caroline Taylor, and I am a case manager, housing specialist at Allied Churches. I've been there about a year, and during my entire time there, one of the first things that I do when I meet with a resident is ask them where was the last stable place they lived. And I would say probably 7 out of 10 times they will say, I used to live in a boarding house on Maple Avenue, or I used to live in a boarding house on Story Street. And while these places are not always the best places, it's still a place where someone can go. And I think that we really need to take into consideration looking at the safe, what we consider safe and what we consider standard. Because as part of my role, I go to different realtors and landlords and take our residents around and to look at these places. And just this past weekend, I was in the most obscene 2-bedroom apartment that is being rented through an agency. And it's not a boarding house, it's a 2-bedroom apartment, and it is not habitable by any means. So I think that we need to look into the safety and the standards of boarding houses, but also across the board, and kind of consider what do we want people here to think about when they think of a boarding house, and what do we want people to think about when they hear safe, affordable housing in Burlington? Does that exist, and how can we make that happen? And I do just want to read you a couple quotes. I did go around today in the last few days and talk with some of our residents and former residents, and just, we brought up the topic of boarding houses, and I asked, what do you think would happen if they were to be completely closed down? And here are just some of their responses. Someone said, instead of shutting them down, you should be caring about better looking into regulating these houses. Some landlords are slum landlords, some don't care about people, just their money, but getting rid of these places altogether would put a lot of people out on the street. Another person said, it would hurt a lot of people, it would make many more people homeless, and where are they all going to go? The shelter can't hold all these people, this will impact the whole community. And the last one I want to share with you is people who are making minimum wage, who are paying child support, and who have bills to pay off can't afford the cost of an average apartment here in Burlington. Boarding rooms are usually furnished and include utilities, and it's easier for us to afford this while saving money to get our own place. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to closing city council comments. Any comments from council? Couple of notes here. Destination Burlington Open House gives give your input on the future city plans of Burlington this Thursday, June 19th, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. at North Park's Mako Bigelow Center. Burlington Recreation and Parks invites you to join our annual July 3rd Independence Day celebration. Rides open at 10. All other festivities will begin at 5. City of Burlington office will be closed Friday, July 4th in observation of Independence Day. What's next on the agenda is the request for closed session, but just for the news media. We had actually was going to have continuation of the evaluation of the city manager. We've decided to postpone that until the next meeting in July, which is what, Ms. Ward? The 15th of July. We will go in closed session for that. At this point in time, I would turn it over to the city attorney, Mr. Bateman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I would request that the city council entertain entering a closed session for the purpose of discussing potential litigation issues.
So moved.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll return. Thank you.
We ain't running it to Gibsonville, I'm telling you right now. We don't even know where, you know where Gibsonville is? No, I don't even know where it is. You can't, our motto is Gibsonville, you can't get there from here.
I met with her yesterday. I agree with you. It's been on our radar, it's been serious.
Got you done?
I understand. You got one right there on Rolling Road.
Get her done. I had to pave it in the road. Ian, how you doing? How you doing? Good seeing you again. Good deal. Good deal.
I understand very well. It's on my agenda. Well, good. How are you? Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll have one again to discuss our next phase. Show me that down on the table.
You brought that to our room? No, he made that my project.
Rocky don't play. Rocky was good getting up sometimes. He's like, I know the thing.
Bang the gavel and walk out. I hope so. You like my line, Stephanie? She heard it. Oh, my. That is a violation. Yeah, I did. I heard that. That was good, Jeff. We won't see it here. Did I make things? No. Now I really want to know what's
Wake him up. You'll go. She's pretty. Tell her how.
Because just what it is possible.
Really? That is a big deal. Sure, she might be just like that. He told me I was hard-headed. I said, I'm not hard-headed, I just know when you're wrong.
They contacted Rashida, she'll be back.
Rashida. They contacted Rashida. Hey, Mark and I are going to work together on that tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So we'll put it on the simulator, take it to the range, put it back on the simulator, take it back to the range, back and forth like that until it works something out.
Any contact with the business, everything's secure.
Okay.
Once that begins.
All right, Ken, we'll take care of it.
Negative, we
All right,
not
bye.
have any contact.
Thank you.
Great,
So, you receive a, come back to long-term aid, receive a proper cancellation too.
Kind of a decom responses and it's been a keynote with the caller stating that she saw a child in the dress, not sure if the child was hit by a human or by a vehicle. Careful. 269, we've located the moped and addressed it.
10-4. Just hang tight there for a second.
You think you're gonna be able to respond? Six will show you 10-8. Ten one. Thank you, 20.
I'll tell you that, I'd rather make a 3-year-old standing on the motor, holding on to the animal while he's driving. And doesn't know what he's doing. Type back, Renee, tell her I said, Chuck says he's got a universal remote.
Thanks, Trevor. 847.
Nope. We're working. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Jeremy's transferring to CID. He can't handle working for a tough supervisor. I actually worked an hour over last month. I worked an hour over. Doesn't make a difference where I was at. I worked an hour over. I had to step up and tell people to shut up on the radio because you weren't doing it. So the supervisor, guarding tracking. Did you type that to Angie for me?
125, 10-8. Yeah, that's better location.
Did you type that message to Angie for me? I'm surprised she hadn't reported. Oh, the phone's getting ready to die. We got 1% left.
847, 843 on check. 843 is more than likely going to be 1025 instead of apartment.
28 invitation, 10:18, huh? He didn't come raise, I've got college stuff wrong with the time to contact Thank you so much.
Yeah, I remember everybody the other day, I was walking out. I think Christmas is good at every night. There's State Street. It was on permanent night. Every night. It will.
actually did in the restroom for your information. There you go. Okay, entertain a motion to go back into open session.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn.
Second.
Yay.